Elizabeth, good morning. How can I help?
Hi. Thanks so much for talking to me, Dr. John. How are you?
I am doing outstanding this morning. It's a blessing to get to just hang out with everybody. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good deal. So how can I help this morning?
So, my grandparents have been going through some really tough times, and they're just such wonderful, generous people, and I'm just having a really hard time knowing how to best love and support them in such hard times.
Tell me about hard times. What do hard times mean?
So, a little over a month ago, my grandfather was diagnosed with esophageal cancer.
Yuck. I'm so sorry.
And he's in his 70s, so he's, he's really healthy for his age, but, it's just been really difficult for him. And then a couple weeks ago, on their way to another biopsy, they ended up having to go to the ER because turns out he had an infection in his hip that went septic, and he was in stage 3 sepsis, and so they, he was there for 2.5 weeks, and, they were just cleaning it out and trying to get him healthy. And, they called us last weekend and said they didn't know if he would make it. And so we went up there to go, just be with my grandmother. Fast forward to kind of what's going on right now. He actually made it through the surgery really well. And he's at home recovering, until he has to do another surgery to completely replace the hip. And praise God, they actually had another biopsy, and it's completely negative. Like, the cancer went away while he was there.
Wow, very cool.
Which is really amazing. But now that they're back home, I'm just kind of trying to figure out how to help them. They don't like to ask or take help. They're really generous themselves, but they don't want to feel like a burden to others. And I know they've got a lot of medical bills, and they're not really set up for their future. And so I guess I just was wondering how I can best support them, and then also kind of how to start talking with them about hard things like, do they have a will, or like what's like the next step. I don't feel like they like to talk about those things, but I just don't know like what role I can play.
So here's the deal. Your heart is gold, and I can hear it through the phone, and I just want to high five you from Nashville to Nevada. Nope, not even a high five. This is a pre-COVID era two-handed front hug. I just want to tell you I love you, and I'm grateful for your heart here. Grandparents are precious, and they are beautiful, and especially ones that sound like yours that are generous and giving and present. And there's nothing more challenging than watching loved ones going through pain and hurting, both relationally, your poor grandmother's just watching the man she loves on a table, right? And the actual physical pain that your granddad's going through. And then with that feeling of helplessness, right? We can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So there's a few things here that are swirling around in my head, and I'll just lay them out in kind of a rapid fire, sideways, crooked order here, okay? The first thing I want you to do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
Okay. Do they love your grandparents the same way you do?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to connect with them, and whether it is through a Zoom conference or an email chain or a text chain, my preference would be y'all get together and hang out, but depending on where everybody lives and all that, and I know the travel's a mess now. But I want y'all to have some fun times remembering the fun things about grandma and granddad, the crazy things, the mean things when they were super hardcore disciplinarians back when y'all were little, and how now they just laugh, or whatever weird little peccadillos your grandparents have. I want you to spend some time remembering. One of the things that stinks about when our loved ones hurt is that becomes our picture of them, and it overshadows, it overweighs like a heavy anxiety blanket. It lays over these just treasure trove of years and years of beautiful memories, time together, laughter, silliness, all that stuff, right? So I want you to spend some time proactively with your brothers and sisters, your siblings, remembering the awesome, okay? That's for you. That's for your heart. what's going through your heart and mind right now, here's the deal. You've recognized that these pillars in your family that have held y'all up for years, they're getting old. And the one sad, crummy part of this whole existence that we share is that we all pass away at the end, right? And hopefully they've got 20 more years that are of awesome fun, silliness. My dream is that to be a 90-year-old grandparent hosing my grandkids off in the yard, sneaking behind a tree and just blasting them with a water hose. That just sounds like fun to me. My hope is that y'all have that time, but you've got a crack in the armor now. And now you've got a dose of reality that's just never fun to have to take. The second thing is, we often think people are more frail emotionally than they really are. Occasionally, people refuse to talk about death. Occasionally, they won't have hard conversations, but often they crave them. They just don't know how to start them. And so one of the greatest gifts you can give to aging grandparents is presence, is if you can't be in contact with them directly, is handwritten letters. Make it a practice every week that you write them one funny story you remember. One time they really surprised you with their generosity. One, deep track, a deep cut from one of the stories that your mom and dad told about them about, hey, one time they just showed up with a casserole and some money and helped us out when we were newlyweds. Those kind of old stories, write them down and send it to them. There's something about it for a grandparent is understanding that they are leaving a legacy. They are leaving changed hearts, that they have a family tree that's going to go on. And the more you can reinforce that either through presence or through something tangible that they can reread and reread and reread. I remember a conversation I had with my granddad before he passed when I called him and just said, hey, listen, I want you to know you gave me your last name. And I want you to know I'm going to do the best I can to honor that. You've been a good man. My granddad had a reputation for being really, really, really nice. He's just the nicest guy. And I told him, I'm going to honor that. And even last night, my post on Instagram had something to do with kindness. That's just become part of my DNA. But I made sure I let him know this is going to be something that's going to carry on when you're gone. And then the thing about the will, there's no way to have that gently or compassionately or where it's not weird. It's one of those conversations that you just put out there. Do you have parents? Are they involved in this? Or is there kind of skipped a generation where you're connected with your grandparents pretty closely?
Yeah, my mom and her sister are involved, but
okay.
There's just some weird family dynamics there too. So I know there's some some tensions.
We'll save that for another call. I'll just tell you a funny story from my life, and it's funny because I come from a weird family who's lived and worked around death a lot. I had a close friend of mine, a really lovely, one of my best friends in the world, and her dad died suddenly in a tragic car wreck, and he was a police officer. And I was on the phone with her and her husband. He's one of my oldest best friends in the world, when they were looking for this magic box. And most police officers have a box that has all of their things in it, their will, their passwords, their bank accounts, because they know at any day, at any time I may not come home, and they're trained out of the academy. You leave your home in a state of neutrality. You let your family be able to grieve you and know where all your stuff is. And so police officers just live with this understanding, I might die today. And so I was on the phone with them when they found the box, and it was a hard crying, it was a deeply tragic, but at the same time a beautiful moment, because I remember thinking on the phone with my friends, what kind of awesome dad. This is incredible, man. He left it all there just in case. And just in case happened. So I called my dad, who's was a homicide detective for years. He was a SWAT guy. He still was working in a police department. I called him and said, hey, Dad, you need to get a box together, dude, of all of this stuff. I need to know where your will is just in case something happens. And I'll never forget, Elizabeth, he laughed and he was like, dude, it's behind the thing in my closet. And I was like, you got a box? And he's like, yes, John, everybody should have a box. And so it was this moment. I'd built it up. I was nervous, like, oh, let's talk about the wills. And man, it was just like I was asking him, hey, can I borrow 50 cents for a Coke? And it wasn't a weird thing at all for him. He told me how the stuff's going to work, who's going to do how and what. And it just ended up being a relatively high-level, stress-free conversation. And that was all praise to my dad for doing that. So I tell you that to tell you, I would enter that conversation directionally. It's a math problem. It's not an emotional problem. They need to have a will. And you need to know how you can best support their legacy, their honor, what they want to have done, how you and your brothers and sisters and whatever messy dynamics, how you can help navigate that, and ask them directly. They may tell you, we're not talking about a will. We're not there yet. Stop bringing that nonsense into our hearts and heads. Hopefully they don't. They sound like generous, wonderful people, and they just won't. But thank you, Elizabeth, for that call. Thanks for reminding me of how wonderful my granddad was. Just spending some time in those memories, just sitting here on the radio talking to you is a beautiful moment. But at the end of the day, you've got to see a crack in the armor. The strongest pillars of our families are strong dads, our incredible, strong moms, our grandparents who have always been, and it just feels like they're always going to be. They pass away at the end. And it's heartbreaking. And I hate that it's got to be that way, but it is. There's just some stuff on this side of the curtain we don't get to figure out and understand why. But it happens. And so the best we can do is to honor their legacy, let them know that we are honoring them, live lives that honor them, and then, wow, be direct about the math problem. Where are the forms? Where's the this? Who you want to have the car? How do you want us to divide stuff up? Those are the math problems of life that people often run around and avoid. And it takes somebody like you, Elizabeth, who cares about her family, just to kind of head right into the middle of that conversation. And I hope that they respond like my old man did, with directness, with a smile, with laughter, with, hey, I'm a grown-up. I've got this figured out, and I'll take care of y'all like I always have. That's my prayer and hope for you guys, Elizabeth.